Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening. So we're doing a bit of a hybrid presentation. We'll do something that is very formal, so at least you get an understanding of what it is that we're proposing to do with this project. There's people that are here online and of course people here in person. So the intent is that I give the formal presentation now, and then we have the opportunity to field questions. There's also material available that has been prepared to date, and that's prepared on this table. I would encourage that if you have any comments or questions that you think about after the fact, please send them in to the municipality. There's comment sheets there if you want to send them in via regular mail, and of course, email is always acceptable. There's also still applications opened to be on the task force. So if you're interested in being on the task force to help inform this process, please fill out an application and submit it to Paul, and then we'll be in touch with you. So the purpose of being here this evening is to talk about preparing a community engagement strategy. So I'm just going to share a formal presentation to give you an overview of the purpose, what we've done to date, and what we're hoping to gain through this first consultation process. Yes.
Speaking to us.
I'm getting there. So thanks everyone for being here this evening. My name is Diana Kay. I'm the manager of the Planning Services Department at DM Wills and the consulting planner on behalf of the municipality. I will be working with Paul Walsh, the director of planning at the municipality of Brighton, to get through this process. Sorry, Paul?
I think I know everybody here.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I have done lots of work in the past with the municipality. We did a mature neighborhood study. We did updates to the official plan and zoning bylaw, and we helped the municipality with initiating their secondary plan process. So this is our latest project that we've partnered up with the municipality to help through create a new community engagement strategy. So we'll get into it. The presentation overview, so we're going to look at an overview of the project. We're going to talk about the background, why we're doing this, the purpose of it, what's the expected deliverable and outcome, and also the public consultation process that we'll engage as we go through the engagement strategy. Because even though we're preparing an engagement strategy, we are still consulting with the public through this strategy to help us inform what the final deliverable will look like. We'll also get into the next steps, and then we will get into questions and answers. So that way we can start garnering some feedback to help us form the final product. Next slide. Thank you. So the purpose of the project, again, is to prepare a revised community engagement strategy. And this is inclusive of informing the public on Planning Act applications. So why are we doing this? Well, the province has initiated changes under the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, also known as Bill 185. Some of you may know about this bill. I'll get into the major items from that bill that are directly impacting the strategy that we're talking about this evening. The applications that will be impacted by the strategy itself. So as you know, through the planning process, there are a lot of planning applications that you would submit through the Planning Act. The strategy will really impact the higher order applications. So we're looking at official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, site plans, plans of subdivision and condominium. So we're trying to form a strategy when someone comes in and applies for one of these applications. How can the municipality better engage with the community, and how can we better engage with the applicants to make sure that they're submitting an application that meets the requirements, that fully comprehensively explains what the proposed development is for, and how they're engaging with the community to get their feedback that may impact how they move ahead with their applications. So the primary objectives, of this strategy is to ensure that we're creating a clear and inclusive engagement process. We want to make sure that any future public engagement is meaningful, that you're seeing impact to the engagement that you're having on these applications, and that you're having early consultation with an applicant when they bring forward an application. So that way your voice is being heard and you know that you're engaging with that applicant to help inform their future development plans as they go through the process. So the final product, what are we expecting out of this? So we're hoping to prepare a guideline and procedures document, and this will outline the final strategy, and it will be a tool used by the municipality to inform them how to ensure that proper public consultation and community engagement is being undertaken through the approvals process. And again, this is related to the higher order applications that I mentioned earlier. We're also looking at opportunities to implement new public notification requirements. So currently under the Planning Act, if I have an application coming through, there's specific requirements where I can notify the public through the newspaper or post a sign on the property, or depending on the type of application you have, the municipality is required to send a notification via regular mail to a certain radius. To a certain radius. We're living in different times. People receive and give information in various ways. And sometimes the methods that are so prescriptive and so specific don't always work, and they're not very effective. If I'm in a rural area and I submit a notification that's only 120 meters from my property, I'm not hitting a lot of people. So I'm not notifying enough people potentially about what's going on in my proposal. So we want to look at different ways to make sure that we're extending information to the community so you're being informed and have the opportunity to provide feedback. Next slide. So I mentioned before Bill 185. What does this mean? So there's changes that were made to the Planning Act, and more specifically as it relates to this project, the province has removed the requirement for mandatory pre-consultation. So if I have a planning application before this bill came into effect, I was required to speak to the municipalities and any applicable agencies, for example, a conservation authority, to talk about my proposed application, and we would have a discussion about what kind of application and supporting studies and plans would be required for me to submit the application. So the province has said you no longer have to do that. The Act does say that if an applicant approaches municipal staff and insists on a pre-consultation, then the municipality is required to have those meetings. However, it's no longer the reverse. So mandatory pre-consultation is gone, and we're trying to figure out how do we ensure that we are still having meaningful conversations with applicants, so that way they are submitting an application that will be consistent and conform with provincial municipal policy. Bill 185 also removes third-party appeals, which means if I have a proposed development on my property and my neighbor doesn't like it and council approves it, my neighbor does not have a right to appeal my application. So public consultation will play a big role because through the process, that is the opportunity for you to provide your feedback. So if there's not a good, robust public consultation process, you might lose some of that meaningful discussion with your neighbors. It also allows that if I submit an application and the municipality says to me, you need an environmental impact study, and I don't think it's required, I can appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal to say, I don't think it's reasonable or appropriate. And of course, the tribunal makes a decision to determine if the studies and reports that the municipality has imposed on an applicant, whether or not it is reasonable and appropriate. So it keeps, I think, everybody honest on both sides to make sure that you're scoping the project correctly. And in addition, as I mentioned already, the public notification. So we're looking at alternative methods to inform property owners of what's going on in your community so you can provide meaningful feedback and you're, of course, getting the information that you need. So on the table in front of you, it's also posted on the municipality's website. The first item that we completed was a background report because we wanted to understand what was the current process prior to Bill 180, or I guess the process that was in place before Bill 185, what that looked like, how it was working, and what pieces of that process are still meaningful and appropriate that we should be considering moving ahead. So the background report provides a summary of the rescinded pre-consultation process. Again, it's no longer mandatory. It also provides a summary of the new legislative requirements as a result of Bill 185. So you can see the actual legislation that's been put in place and what it means. There's also provincial and municipal policy direction. So some of you may know that the province has now revoked the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and has implemented the new 2024 provincial planning statement. So lots of changes when it comes to provincial policy documents that are now being used and implemented when reviewing planning applications. You still have to be consistent with the PPS and you still have to conform to municipal planning documents. So there's a summary of the applicable land use matters that are directed through those policy documents. Those are summarized in the background report as well. There's also a summary of some of the existing legislation that you need to be mindful of when submitting applications because those are still in effect and municipal staff still have to follow the legislation. And then, of course, we summarize it with some recommendations based on the direction through the Planning Act. And then it also provides an overview of the public consultation events that we will take throughout this process. So the report, like I said, is available on the municipality's website. I will give an overview of what's in there so you know what the recommendations out of that report were. But I do encourage you to review it, especially because the information that relates to why we're doing this through the legislation and the policy is outlined in there for you. So just to give you an overview of the municipality's pre-consultation process pre-Bill 185, first you would have to do a pre-screen, I guess you can call it, where you'd fill out a form and submit it to the municipality and say, I have an idea, this is what I want to do with my property. What do you think? You'd get feedback, and if staff said, you know what, you're probably going to need an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, you're going to have to come in for a pre-consultation. So you would fill out a pre-consultation form and submit the information. Usually a site plan would suffice, or with some details, of course, with what you're proposing to do. Some people will hire professional planning consultants to help them through the process and give the details to planning staff so that way they can have a good understanding of what it is you're proposing to do on your property. And then from there, after staff has reviewed the application submission for pre-consultation, they would schedule a meeting with you and your consulting teams, should you have one, to go over the proposal and provide the applicant and their consultant team with feedback on their proposal. And then from there, the municipality would provide that applicant with a list of requirements and the type of applications that would need to be submitted in support of their proposed development. So this process provided any applicant with clear direction of this is what the municipality is looking for in order for you to submit an application. And I'll tell you why that's important in the next few slides. So the next slide, as part of the pre-consultation process, again, this is rescinded now. The municipality implemented and imposed a neighborhood open house process. So it really kind of forced the community to come together. So in a good way, though. So if you have an application, say you're building a plan of subdivision and you want to be able to proactively inform your neighbors of what's going on. So the neighborhood open house gave an opportunity where the applicant would prepare at minimum 3 conceptual plans of what they're proposing to do on that lot. The municipality would review it, provide feedback. If changes were needed, the consultant team would go back and revise it. The municipality would give it another review. If everything's good, then that applicant and their team would schedule a neighborhood open house and then present the three options to the public so they can garner feedback. And the intent was really to get one preferred option from the neighborhood input. So it helped make sure that before you submit an application, a formal application, you're already garnering public feedback on your application process. So you're using the information that you're getting from the public to help inform your plan. So since all of that is rescinded, and now we have to think about, how do we continue to make sure that we have meaningful consultation with the community? There are some key findings that are in the Planning Act to make sure that we can still undertake a robust public consultation process, even though pre-consultation and other parts of public consultation aren't required. So when you look at the Planning Act, and this information is available in the background report, the Planning Act continues to require that municipal staff deem applications complete. And applications can't be deemed complete unless staff is satisfied that they have the required information to make sure that they can process the application and come to a recommendation at the end of the day. So as part of a complete application, it's not just submitting the required applications, but it's the time when the municipality or appropriate agencies, for example, the Conservation Authority, will tell you that you might need certain plans and studies to support the proposed development that you're submitting the application for. So this could be a traffic impact study, it could be environmental impact assessment, it could be a hydrogeological assessment, excuse me. So it could be a variety of studies. So in order to deem an application complete, the municipality is going to want to see certain things to make sure that they can review it against provincial and municipal policy and make a proper recommendation. The Act still requires that if you're submitting for plans of subdivision, that you still have a public notification process. You still need some kind of consultation strategy under plans of subdivision. So that didn't really go away. So applicants will still be required to engage. And of course, I already mentioned that the Act does allow for alternative forms of public notification. And so those are being considered through this process. In addition to that, and if appropriate, a municipality can also forego providing notice. And this is in very rare cases. I think a good example, not that the strategy is impacting this type of application, but if I have a minor variance application, which is a very minor application, if I'm building something and I'm going to be encroaching into the setback a little closer to my neighbor, but that's the only person it's going to impact, you might want to just have a conversation with that neighbor. And if they're okay with it, then maybe you could forego a full notification process because it's so specific in terms of where that impact would actually be established. It's just an example. I'm not saying the municipality is doing it, but to kind of give you some context as to where that could be applied. So when we look at provincial and municipal policy, the PPS and the official plan, not just the municipality's official plan, but the county's official plan, provides policy direction as it relates to land use. So you still have to be consistent with the PPS. You still have to conform to the official plans and meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw. So at the end of the day, you submit an application, it's going to be reviewed against these policies. So you have to make sure that whatever you're submitting, if it has any impact on very specific policies, for example, if your application has natural heritage features, there's a wetland on your property, the municipality is going to look at your application against the natural heritage policies in the PPS, and you have to be consistent with that. And sometimes the only way to determine if you're consistent with those policies is preparing the background studies like an EIS to make sure that you do. Oh, I wasn't done, sorry. So it's very appropriate to review these type of applications through the community engagement process because you want to make sure that you're getting proper feedback. And there's still legislation and there's still policy in place that enforces you to prepare certain items and to have certain conversations so that way staff feel that they can make a good recommendation or a positive recommendation, whatever it is, on your application moving forward. So in terms of recommendations, and these are just very straightforward recommendations that we found as we started to investigate the background of what the municipality was doing with respect to consultation. We're open to more suggestions. That's why we're here today. But the recommendation so far is we're hoping that the strategy will have voluntary pre-consultation. So applicants will want to speak to the municipality, because there's nothing worse than submitting the wrong application or submitting studies that you probably didn't need. You want to make sure that what you're submitting is appropriate, that you have the studies that will support it, and that you're going to get that application deemed complete. Because the only time that the clock is going to start for approvals is when the municipality deems your application complete. So it's very important that that happens. Public notice enhancements, expanding the methods beyond the traditional methods that are being used. As I mentioned, newspaper notifications and signage. It doesn't always work if you're in the community or you're on the street and you're driving by, the signage is great. But if you're 3 blocks down and you haven't happened to drive down that street for a month, then you might not be informed. So there's better ways to make sure that the community knows about the application that's going to be heard in front of council. Increased accessibility and inclusivity. So continuing on with developing an open house strategy, continuing to make sure that you're bringing information to the public before you submit an application, to make sure that you're getting that community feedback and you're helping and inform your plans as you move forward. Digital engagement, of course, we have a lot of technology right now where we can utilize different methods, so that way we're getting information out to the public in a timely manner. You can mail something, but it might take a lot longer, than otherwise. If you just post it on the website or have an email blast to people who have signed up, you're going to get that email a lot quicker than you're going to get the mail through the post office. So the expected outcomes, of course, would be transparent communication between applicants and the public. It's the best way to make sure that you're getting feedback and that you're using that information to help inform your project. It also helps create a sense of trust between the applicant and the community to make sure that they understand what you're proposing to do and you have that constant communication. So it really does help people get along and make sure that you feel that you can trust the process and you know that your feelings and your concerns are being heard throughout the process. Thank you. So just to provide you with an overview of the public consultation that we'll be undertaking, the steering committee, which we will be changing to task force. This is not a committee of council. This is a task force just specific for this project. We're hoping to have a few more applicants apply to be on the task force that can help guide us through this process. So we're encouraging you. There are applications available on the table. They're also available on the municipality's website, and we encourage you to fill them out and apply. Community surveys, again, there's some hard copies here, but it's also available on the municipality's website, and we encourage you to fill out the survey to provide us with some feedback. I want to stress that I understand that not everybody is comfortable talking in front of a group or in talking in front of other people. So there's other methods and ways for you to provide us with your feedback if you feel like you're not comfortable speaking in front of a group. There are comment sheets also available. They're at the end of the table. Please, when you're done with your comments, slide them into the envelope. But if you feel like you want to take it home to think about it, fill out the comment sheets and then bring it back to the municipal office. And that way we can collect your feedback and we'll use it to help inform the final deliverable. We have provided public notices and updates. So there is a specific page on the municipality's website dedicated to the public engagement process. I believe it's with a secondary plan. Or is it? It was. Okay, so it's on its own now. It's moved up in status and it's got its own little a tab. Yes. So please check it out. All the information that we will be completing throughout this process will be posted on that tab. If there's anything that is missing, let us know, or if you feel like you didn't have enough time. I think the survey closes Monday. I will be extending that. I think it's important to extend it as far as possible. So if you feel like you didn't have an opportunity and something is closed, let us know and we'll see if it's appropriate to give you the opportunity to engage in that process. And of course, tonight is the neighborhood open house. So we've done a little bit of a formal presentation, but I don't want to hear myself speak. I want to hear what you guys have to say about how you're being consulted on development projects in your community, what you think this project can do to help you get access to information, how to provide feedback, and if you're an applicant, how you feel this process could help you better work with your community when you're submitting applications. And just on top of that, because this process will form part of the official plan, we do have to submit an official plan amendment, which means we're going to have a public, statutory public meeting. So you'll get notification of when that meeting will be. It's going to be a little further in the future, but not too far. So there's going to be another opportunity for everyone to meet together, but with council to provide feedback at that time as well, especially because we'll have more information at that time for you to comment on. So the next steps, we are continuing to receive feedback from the public to make sure that we have enough information that will inform the procedures and guidelines document that we will be preparing at the end. It's really important to have the feedback because the documents are prepared for the property owners. It's definitely a document and a tool that the municipal staff can use to implement and help them guide through the community engagement process. But it's really meant for property owners to make sure that they are engaging in the process. And as I mentioned, we'll need an official plan amendment, and of course, that will go to council for approval. So this whole strategy will have to go to council for approval at the end of the day. And so if you have any questions, Paul and I are available. Our contact information is on there. It's also on all of the information that we've posted on the municipality's website. Feel free to contact us when you think of something or, outside of these processes, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. So that's the end of the formal presentation part. We'll open it up to questions. That was a lot of information, so definitely if you want to step back a bit and peel some of this apart and get through it, let me know and we can walk you through the process step by step. And I know there's people online, so yeah, if people online want to, if you have a question or a comment, please use the raise hand button and we'll be monitoring that to make sure that you have an opportunity to speak. Any questions? I do see some familiar faces, so it's nice to see people coming back and engaging in these processes. It's no fun if I'm here by myself. If you don't mind stepping closer to the table and using the microphone so the people online can hear. Sure.
And try not to make it to our own particular file. But when did the new act come into effect?
So Bill 185 was enacted in April. When was
think
it?
so.
Yeah, April of this year.
And how will this new act affect site planning? So you talked about pre-consultation, you talked about putting in new applications, but what about existing applications, existing files, I guess is the word I'm looking for because I'm not an expert. So how will this affect existing files or site plans or municipal or regional requirements?
Yeah, so I don't want to speak on behalf of the municipality, but I'll take this one and you correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Same for both of us.
Yeah, so if there's an existing application already with the municipality, they're in that process. So there's not much you can do to we're not going to go back.
Okay.
But if in that application, a new application is required, say that they've changed their mind and they have to go back and submit a revised application, the new legislation would kick in and they would be required to follow
Okay.
that. That was question one. Question two.
Site plans, how
Site
does this
plans.
affect this new?
Site plans, because the zoning is already in place and the use is approved, it is not typically a public,
But you mentioned a
consultation
change
process.
to site plans.
sorry, that was specific to pre-consultations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's about it. That's about it. I mean, everything else is related to our own file, so I can take that offside on another,
Yeah, absolutely.
unless I think of something else.
Yes, we're here. Oh, Jeff online. You don't have Jessica?
I don't
have the
technical abilities here.
I can try. As long as you don't mind me
Yeah.
touching the municipal stuff. Okay.
Just don't break a finger.
I see your hand up. You know what, I think if you just unmute yourself, you can go ahead and speak. I don't know if you can hear me, I'm not by the microphone.
Hi, Jeff. Can you hear me okay? Are you able
Yeah.
to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm able to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. So please go ahead.
Okay, perfect. I'm actually here on behalf of the Masonry Council of Ontario, the trade group for the Ontario brick and stone sector. Just had a couple of questions I wanted to run by you. Has thought been given to adding architectural, sort of an urban design brief or an architectural control statement to the complete application requirements for new plans of subdivision? And the second question I would have is, has there been any consideration of the community planning permits process and how that might affect the public consultation for new development applications?
Thank you, Jeff. Those are good questions. With respect to the urban design brief and architectural plans, so there, as part of pre-consultation that we're hoping that the community would, or applicants, sorry, would still engage in, there, it's part of the list of studies that the municipality could potentially ask for. Of course, under the Planning Act, any development 10 units or under, it's not subject to site plan, so there's no opportunity there. There really is no architectural control either, but there's some policies that can be implemented, and some are implemented in the official plan, that could be discussed through urban design briefs, to make sure that we're considering the massing of a building, to ensure that we're not imposing on neighbors with shadows or any of like stuff like that. So it's still an option as part of the pre-consultation process that the municipality could impose that kind of study.
Mhm.
I'm going to let you speak to the community planning permits.
Yeah, it's a very good question, Jeff. Community planning permit system, for anybody not familiar with that part of the Planning Act, it is a separate section of the Planning Act. And its previous names were Development Permit System. So that system would replace a combination of site plan control and minor variances. So it's meant to be a flexible tool. So you do need to have special policies in your official plan before you can pass a community planning permit system. And it's more of a design intensive or design oriented process. And it's and in doing so, it does have a more focus, as the term implies, on design. So you can do more urban design and landscape design as part of the process that you would normally typically do. And in areas that are practicing the system, they sometimes pick select areas like waterfront areas where things are a lot of moving parts, a lot of complex terrain, frontage on water, frontage on roads, or maybe not, special landscape features other water features. So there's a lot going on. So placement of buildings is kind of key to optimizing the best value and utilization of waterfront areas, while at the same time preserving the natural heritage of waterfront areas. So it gets to being a design-sensitive planning exercise. So community planning permits are effective for that reason. So it would be desirable perhaps to have that, but maybe in select areas. And for our particular project today, it's outside the scope of what we've done. So we're really just looking at community engagement policies and practices. And at a time when we do consider community planning permit systems, then that will be a separate matter than what we're doing today. But I see how it's germane, Jeff, in your thinking, and I appreciate the question.
I appreciate your answer. The last comment I would make is obviously a lot of the changes to the Planning Act have been very frustrating for planners and people involved in the building sector alike. One thing that has been left in the act is, especially under plans of subdivision, the authority does remain for the municipality to ask for any material that is deemed necessary for a complete application outside of sort of they have kind of a curated list of things that are possible, but also leave it open-ended with the idea of any other material, so long as it's something that a reasonable community would ask for. It's generally been held that architectural and design studies are considered fair. That's been taken to the Ontario Land Tribunal a few times in the past, and usually what they've said is that council-approved design policies are considered to have weight behind them. So I would say that's something to consider when looking at what we can do in terms of public consultation. And those are my comments, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Those are great questions. I'm going to document, even if it's outside of the scope, I will document it just for the municipality's information, and they have a record of those comments, so they can refer to them later in another process. So it's always good just to even hear feedback. If it is outside of this, we'll be documenting it as well.
We could get a comment on it.
Yep, absolutely. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Hi, Brenda.
Hi, how are you?
Diana, what do other municipalities do in regards to notifying residents of development?
So it really depends on the community and the municipality. Some municipalities where they feel like they need to reach a broader audience will do things digitally. So they will have an email contact list and will send emails out to everybody to notify them of a project, as opposed to sending notification through a newspaper. In addition, this also allows people to be notified if they're outside of the prescribed notification area. For example, you notify 120 meters from a property for a rezoning application. Well, if I live on the other side of the street and I'm interested, I didn't get notification. So some municipalities are using digital notification so that way they can notify anybody in the community who's interested in development applications, no matter where they live, in proximity to where that development application is happening. Some other municipalities are leaving status quo as they think it's sufficient. And some municipalities are deciding that if you're in a rural area, instead of doing 120 meters, they might have council approve the extension to 500 meters radius to circulate to, so they can reach a broader audience. A lot of municipalities right now are looking into this, and because it's kind of at the forefront of what's going on in terms of all the changes. This has already existed in the Planning Act, but because it's being discussed, municipalities are really looking at it now. So we probably won't start seeing what municipalities are doing until the next year, and the new processes are getting implemented. So it's really on a municipality base.
Oh, there we go. It's really tough in Brighton because we no longer have a local paper. We used to have the Independent, and not everybody gets the community press. Not everybody follows the municipality's website. So I think the 120, I think that should be broader because you could have developments way down like 5 streets, but those people on the other streets are going to have streams of traffic of dump trucks, cement trucks, blah, blah, blah. And they don't really know about it until, it's by word of mouth. If they don't get an agenda, which a lot of people don't, they don't know about it. I think the municipality needs to be a little bit more informative to its residents as to how they can keep track, whether they put a blurb in their tax bill, their water bill, something has to be done. When we had the Independent, some of you will know that we used to have a lot of people come to council meetings. And we don't get that anymore. It's after the fact, and it's all over Brighton, Ontario Facebooks. Everybody's complaining, which is too late. So we do need another way to notify these people. Like they'll say, well, I'm not on Facebook. I don't follow Facebook, and I didn't know that. And I don't think it's fair that just those people were told and I wasn't told. So the municipality really needs to look into broader than 120. And also another way of notifying people, whether it's even our local radio station or something, or a big poster when you come into the municipal office, because like there's tons of people that come to the library. Something like, they really, really need to be able to notify the people more of what's going on in this town. I know some people don't care. A lot of people do, but it's after the fact and then it's too late. They don't have a right to say anything because, oh, I'm sorry, it's their approval's already been passed, sort of thing, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the developer's fault. It's not really the municipality's fault, but I mean, now it's falling on the municipality to look into other means of broadening
Yeah.
to let people know about what's going on.
Absolutely. Yes, those are great points. I definitely jotted some of those down because any feedback we can get on alternative methods of notification, we'll definitely look into and see it's appropriate. And I don't think it necessarily means we're going to replace. So even if the municipality decides that it's going to continue to notify 120 meters, it's going to be supplemented with other things. So everything is still on the table. We want to have a very robust review of all the options on how to best notify the public of applications. So it could be that you're supplementing what's required under the Planning Act with other means to reach that broader audience. We're definitely looking at potentially asking council, because council would have to approve it, to extend that circulation radius beyond the 120 meters. So it's an option that we'll look into, absolutely. Yeah, because, you're in a community where there's a lot going on, there's a lot happening. You're by the lake, but I believe most of those residents are permanent. But for example, if you've got a lake association, they're not going to read the local paper that's going on in November.
No.
So you've got to figure out how are you going to get this information to people who might not be here all year round as well. So those are considerations that we need to look into to make sure that people are being notified, whether they're permanent residents or whether they just want to know what's going on in their community, regardless of where the development is happening. So valid points.
When do you see the next meeting happening? Would it be before January?
No.
We talked to get a bridge in January, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe in January.
Yeah, in January,
It would be in January?
Probably.
right? Yeah.
Snowbird.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Diana. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Give us
Thank
your
you.
Florida email. Give us your Florida or your southern email.
I think what's good too, just to supplement, is that having the hybrid option, so that way, if there's obviously a different way that we would notify you of when the next meeting would be. So if you're out of the country and you're enjoying yourself in Florida or wherever you're going to go, that you're still notified and that you're still being connected to the meeting itself and have the opportunity to speak. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a good point. Thank you. Any other questions online, anyone? Please raise your hand. Any opinions, feedback, ideas that you feel might be beneficial to inform us through this process? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Write that down, flyers. Yeah, like I said, there's definitely opportunity to still use traditional methods. We don't want to not offer that to people who rely on it. It's just making sure that we can reach a broader audience, that we're using current technology in addition to some of the traditional methods. So we're capturing people who like emails and people who, like to receive it in the mail. There's always that option. Sorry, my mic's not on. That's a good example. So if you're in a rural area and your internet is not great or you don't have internet at all, I mean, you still want to be able to get information more traditional way. So having a mailer, whether it could be an option where, you could subscribe to the municipality's emails, an opportunity to subscribe to the township or the municipality to say, I would like hard copies of each Planning Act application that goes through, so you can decide what you're interested in and what you're not interested in. That could be an option as well. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. And the materials that we are preparing through this process, we are giving hard copies to the municipality. We're hoping that they're not only available at the municipal office, but maybe the library and the community centers. So there's different ways that you can access the information. Of course, there's always an opportunity where if you just let Paul know that you're looking to peruse one of the hard copies, you can make an appointment and get a copy so that way you can review it. Anyone online have any questions or comments or feedback or ideas that they would like to share? Anyone on the floor? That's correct. Would you like to handle that one?
Sure, good question. We're really just following the existing legislation and regulations as well as the policy and official plan. Policies and official plan will outline some background materials that are relevant for any development application, depending on the situation, the proposal, and the location. So we have that playbook basically in place now. Legislation does have some open-ended features to it, encouraging municipalities to have certain policies for alternative public notification. And so that's what we're really focused on here with this project. That's correct. Now, the legislation as resulting from Bill 185 says it's the applicant's choice to have pre-consultation or not. And from the staff point of view, it's always desirable to have pre-consultation just so that, in my experience, it minimizes the amount of rework. If everyone has some clarity with, getting some of those ducks lined up early through an initial meeting, basically with maybe a little site plan or sketch, as Diana has described, then that can go a long way. And then one of the reasons why we've always encouraged some of the public open houses as part of building up an application was also to identify any issues that the community felt needed to be addressed or were more priority over others, so that the applicant can be aware of that before finalizing the application. So I've seen many instances where the public meeting, once the application has been submitted, there were some missed issues, and now you're going back and redoing your plans, redoing the background reports, hydrologies that missed a neighbor's well, for example. Now the whole crew has to go back out and basically retest wells, and now include that missed well, and all very expensive and time-consuming stuff, all which could have been avoided by some early public consultation. That's correct, and I'm finding a lot of developers are still wanting that pre-consultation because there may be some practices established that might take a general policy, and well, this is how we actually implement that policy. There's always a little bit of interpretation there. Not always. Sometimes it can be read black and white, but I think developers take on quite a bit of risk at times, and they like to maybe to really understand how things are going to go forward in terms of application of policy and process through that first meeting with staff, and staff need to make themselves available to have those discussions.
I will add to that most municipalities are taking the same approach where they're doing the same thing that they've always done until they come up with a process that works. I'm not seeing a lot of applicants, especially developers, people who do this for a living. They want that understanding and security of what do you need from me in order to deem my application complete. I do think in most cases, not doing so, you run the risk of doing things that you should have done, and some work is seasonal. And if you miss that window and you needed it, you're going to have to wait till the next year. It's just not worth the risk. And they're professionals. They know how the process works. As a private consultant, I don't have very many clients who like to not go to pre-con. Having those boundaries and understanding what the requirements are is really important. But I think it's important to note that just because you go to pre-consultation and you get a list of requirements doesn't mean you can't have a conversation with the municipality and the agencies to kind of either scope some of the items that are required or talk about how some of them might not be needed at all. And most municipalities are receptive to that. And, the municipality of Brighton, of course, wants to work with its applicants. So coming to that agreement of what is required versus what we probably won't need because there's no benefit to it versus what can be scoped a little bit more, those opportunities are still available at pre-consultation. So you don't get a whole list of studies that, just because a municipality said you have to do it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have those conversations. Yeah. Any other questions, comments? Concerns?
We'll mill about and have one-on-one chats
Yeah.
after this.
Yep. Yeah, so we can break out of the more formal session and then just actually have some interactive conversations. So if you have something personal that you want to talk about, that staff is available to answer those questions. Because again, I know that not everyone is comfortable sharing in front of a crowd. So I think we can break and have a discussion. For the people that are online, please feel free to reach out to Paul or myself if you have questions, and we can definitely set up a call and answer some of your questions as well if you're not comfortable having them in this setting. Because you're not here, unfortunately, you'll have to call us, but we do look forward to your feedback if that's the more appropriate way that you feel you can have a discussion. Thank you, everyone.